There's a particular kind of gardening magic that happens when you understand something most people miss entirely, that November isn't the end of your garden season, but rather the beginning of next year's abundance. While your neighbors are abandoning their plots and waiting for spring catalogs to arrive, you have the opportunity to set into motion a series of biological processes that will give you such a dramatic advantage come March that people will ask what your secret is. I've watched this transformation happen in my own garden year after year, and the difference between gardens that receive proper November attention versus those left to fend for themselves is so striking that it looks like two completely different growing zones. This isn't about complicated techniques or expensive inputs. It's about working with nature's rhythms during this critical transition period when your soil is still biologically active and your plants are preparing for dormancy. Let's start with what's happening beneath the surface that most gardeners never consider. Your soil in November is still alive with microbial activity, still processing organic matter, still building structure, but this window is closing as temperatures drop. Proper mulching at this time serves multiple purposes that extend far beyond simple insulation. Apply a 3 to 4 inch layer of organic mulch around perennials, shrubs, and over garden beds, but here's the crucial detail most people get wrong. Wait until after the first hard freeze to apply it. If you mulch too early while soil is still warm, you create perfect habitat for rodents to nest and potentially damage plant crowns. Once the ground has frozen, your mulch layer locks in soil moisture, moderates temperature fluctuations that can heave plants out of the ground, and provides slow-release nutrients as it gradually decomposes throughout winter. Pruning dormant plants requires more discernment than simply cutting everything back. Perennials with hollow stems like ornamental grasses should be left standing through winter. Those stems provide overwintering habitat for beneficial insects including native bees, and predatory insects that will help control pests next season. However, any plants that showed signs of disease during the growing season must be cut back completely and the debris removed from your property, not composted. Fungal spores and bacterial pathogens overwinter on dead plant material, and leaving infected foliage in place guarantees you'll be fighting the same diseases next year. Pay particular attention to roses, peonies, and tomato plants if you're in a region where you grew them. These are notorious for harboring problems that seem to mysteriously return each season. Your garden tools have served you faithfully all season, and November maintenance ensures they'll be ready when spring fever hits. Clean every tool thoroughly, removing all soil and plant residue, then sharpen blades on pruners, shears, and hoes. A sharp tool makes cleaner cuts that heal faster on plants and requires less physical effort from you. Oil wooden handles with linseed oil to prevent cracking, and coat metal parts with a light layer of mineral oil to prevent rust. This hour of attention in November saves you the frustration of discovering rusted, dull tools when you're eager to work in March. Here's where November work creates results that seem almost miraculous come spring. Your soil temperature in November is still warm enough for biological activity, but cool enough that nutrients won't leach away with winter rains. This makes it the absolute optimal time for adding amendments that will integrate slowly and be perfectly available when plants need them most. Spread a 2-inch layer of finished compost over all your garden beds, working it lightly into the top few inches of soil. This fall feeding accomplishes multiple goals simultaneously. It provides slow-release nutrients, improves soil structure, increases water retention capacity, and feeds the soil food web of beneficial bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that create plant-available nutrients. If you have areas that will remain unplanted through winter, consider sowing cover crops that work actively to improve your soil even in cold conditions. Winter rye is exceptionally cold-hardy and develops extensive root systems that prevent erosion, break up compacted soil, and add organic matter when you turn it under in spring. Crimson clover fixes atmospheric nitrogen through its relationship with rhizobia bacteria, essentially creating free fertilizer while providing early nectar for pollinators before you cut it down. Austrian winter peas offer similar nitrogen-fixing benefits with the added advantage of producing biomass quickly. These cover crops transform what would be dormant, exposed soil into an actively improving resource. For gardeners dealing with heavy clay or sandy soil, November is your opportunity to make structural improvements that require time to integrate. clay soils benefit enormously from coarse sand and compost worked in during fall. The freeze-thaw cycles of winter help break up clay particles and incorporate amendments in ways that manual digging alone cannot achieve. Sandy soils need the opposite treatment with heavy applications of compost and aged manure to increase water and nutrient retention. These amendments need months to become one with your existing soil, and spring planting is too late to make these foundational changes effectively. Not all plants face winter with equal resilience, and knowing which ones need your intervention prevents heartbreaking losses of specimens you've nurtured for years. Container plants present particular vulnerability because their roots are exposed to temperature extremes that in-ground plants never experience. Move tender container plants into unheated garages, sheds, or protected alcoves where they'll stay dormant but won't experience the extreme freezing and thawing cycles that kill roots. For containers too large to move, group them together in a sheltered location and wrap them with burlap or bubble wrap, focusing insulation on the pot itself rather than the plant. It's the roots you're protecting. Newly planted trees and shrubs, anything that went into the ground within the past year, need extra winter protection because their root systems haven't established enough to withstand cold stress. Create windbreaks using burlap screens staked around the plant, protecting particularly from drying winter winds that desiccate evergreen foliage. Apply extra mulch in a donut shape around the base, keeping it away from the trunk to prevent rot, but extending it out to the drip line where feeder roots are most active. For marginally hardy plants you're experimenting with, create simple cold frames using straw bales arranged in a square with old windows or clear plastic laid on top. This passive solar design can provide 10 to 15 degrees of frost protection. The most valuable November protection strategy is perhaps the simplest: deep watering before the ground freezes. Plants don't stop needing moisture just because they're dormant, and winter drought kills more plants than actual cold temperatures. Water deeply so that moisture penetrates 12 to 18 inches down where roots reside. This hydration helps plants withstand freezing temperatures and provides the moisture evergreens in particular need to replace what they lose through their foliage all winter long. When March arrives and you walk into your garden, the difference between November-prepped beds and neglected ones becomes immediately obvious. Your soil is loose, rich, and ready to plant without weeks of amendment and preparation. Your perennials emerge strong and disease-free because they weren't fighting pathogens all winter. Your tools are sharp and ready the first warm day you feel compelled to work. Most remarkably, your plants begin growing earlier and more vigorously because the soil food web you fed last November has been working all winter to create plant-available nutrients that are waiting precisely when roots become active. This November investment gives you something even more valuable than early blooms. It gives you time. While other gardeners are still preparing beds and amending soil in April, you're already planting and enjoying your garden. The hours you spend this month multiply into weeks of advantage next season, and that advantage compounds year after year as your soil health improves and your garden becomes increasingly resilient. If you're ready to transform your spring garden by taking action this November, please subscribe to Healing Gardens for more seasonal wisdom that works with nature's timing. Share this video with fellow gardeners who deserve to discover that the secret to spring abundance is hidden in autumn preparation. Let's grow stronger gardens together, one thoughtful season at a time.